Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. Hope you enjoy. Story number 1, Saved by First Contact, written by Rebel Hero. Our war against the Krull was going poorly. We were a civilization of scientists, farmers, teachers. Our ideal garden world had left us little reason to master the arts of warfare. It was just another study to us. The Orcs, however, saw it as a way of life. We were helpless against their assault. We learned quickly, though, and dug in. Our fortifications were enough to hold them back for a time, but it wasn't enough. We knew that they would overwhelm us eventually. Then, a radio signal was intercepted. A former new civilization, yet undiscovered. There was so much noise in it, the message was hard to translate. But we worked day and night on it. Now, it seems so strange that we directed so much of our efforts into decoding a message from another world, while our own burned around us. But we did. We built the necessary equipment and had out most of our powerful interstellar satellites send out a response. We are the Naktatha. Our time is coming to an end, but we are filled with great joy to have met you. We assumed that would be our legacy, as the time it would take a radio message to cross the stars would be centuries, maybe. We did not have that long. Our call did not rush, but our defeat was inevitable. Then a reply came, hardly a decade later. The advancements in their simple radio signal were profound. The message was much clearer, shorter, and seemingly sent directly to us. We are humanity. You are our first contact. Can we aid you? We were filled with shock, pride, happiness, then horror. No, they could not aid us. We would not feed another civilization to the Orcs in a vain hope for survival. We replied quickly, war, death, slaughter. Do not aid us. All will be lost. We gathered round for a quiet, bittersweet celebration at a first contact of a new civilization in eons. Our cities continued to slowly fall. Our population dwindled. Our people used as fodder and feed. We wept in silence and merely waited for the end. The next reply came just under another decade later, a few weeks after the Orcs landed on our shores, one of the last remaining continents. The message was short. We must. And our hearts sank. Surely by the time they arrived, our planet would be a husk, a hive for the Orcs. Then, before we could respond, another message. We have arrived. And the sky filled with fire. Massive jagged metal ships fell through the atmosphere, trailing fire and smoke. Then each ship dislodged more smaller ships, which in turn launched thousands of even smaller ships. In less than an hour, the sky was filled with screams and roars of these strange human machines. From some of the larger ships, the humans exited. They were small things, so very small, but there were so many. They all looked mostly the same, save for the difference in the colors they presented. The ones that looked the most different, with the long white cloth flowing from them, came straight to us. The rest began to work, digging and building. The ones with white could not speak our language, but had small machines that did it for them. It was broken and awkward, but we understood. Friend, danger, defend, enemy, data. We tried to make them understand the horror of the Orcs. They seemed only emboldened, so we told them all we could. When the shouting started, we knew the Orcs were near. We shook with fear, many of us collapsing. Our new white-clothed human friends rushing to our sides. What followed, though, wasn't the sounds of what we'd come to expect. There were great booms that shook everything. Then again, as the ground itself seemed to explode, the Orcs fell by the thousands. The human armaments delivered death at ranges never before thought to be possible. The wall of death that the Orcs usually pushed forth seemed to turn on them. The sound was deafening and endless. For hours they fought, These strange machines they used shaking their whole bodies violently, but they continued on. Then something we had never seen before happened. The Orcs broke ranks and fled, and our brave, insane human friends chased them. They ran straight towards the fleeing Orcs. They had no chance to catch them, but they ran anyway, scrambling over the dead and dying like a tide of insanity with two legs. Only time an Orcs turned to fight, the humans simply laid down and fired their weapons again. And if the Orcs got too close, they simply turned around and ran away. They did this without end for days. They chased them off cliffs and into rivers and lakes, all the way back to the oceans. Many Orcs simply died fleeing, or fell on the ground and was either trampled or captured by the humans. These strange, small, soft creatures chased the most dangerous beings that we have ever known off of the continent. The humans seemed to be amused by our astonishment. One of the white-clothed humans told us, "Ancestors, primitive, world dangerous, run, survive, fight back, throw." And our people, with all of our knowledge and all of our learning, never once thought to throw our weapons at our enemies. End of story. Story number 2. The Humans Got It Done, written by Soul but better. War on the ground was a messy affair. Everybody knew it too. The vast majority of nations prefer to fight from the comfort of the sky, bombarding from the safety of well-armored ships. This is so much the case that entire interstellar conventions and doctrines had been formed specifically to address the popularity of this warfare. By the time the humans arrived on the galactic stage, most nations had completely disbanded their ground forces in favor of simply bombarding an objective, with that objective being surrendered once a certain threshold of damage had been inflicted in accordance with galactic convention. And, for centuries, that was what warfare looked like. Not for the humans, though. They, like many primitive species, had arrived on the scene with their clunky ground forces and archaic artillery. However, unlike other species, they did not shed these implements of war in favor of conventional method of orbital bombardment. Rather, they grew their ground forces to be used alongside orbital bombardment, working in tandem to create a uniquely effective form of warfare. They threatened to displace the status quo of warfare, but for the most part, we left the humans to their own devices, and they left us to ours. That was until the arrival of the Horde. For centuries, disunited tribes of barbaric and nomadic spacefarers had wandered the vast swaths of the Pembrian Drift, battling amongst each other with their vast nomad fleets and periodically raiding the settled lands of the Humanity or of the Agro. For the most part, however, they had kept to themselves in their own corner of the savage space. That changed in 2892, however, with the arrival of Malam, a legendary warrior amongst their people. The Malam had united the desperate tribes of the Pembrian Drift and had organized them into one body, known by many names, but to the galaxy, they were the Horde. The Horde swept into the Humanity. The Humanity had long fought against the nomads for centuries of their history, and were adept at countering the tactics in ships. They fought long and bitterly, forcing the Horde to pay for every system gained with 100 ruined vessels. I owe it to the Humanity that we survived the Horde. They brought us the valuable time we needed to organize to counter the threat. But inevitably, Humanity crumbled beneath the Horde, and they turned their attention to the Agro. The Agro, widely regarded as galactic pushovers, elected to surrender to the Horde. They were forced to give up their resources to the Horde, and their ships were repurposed to join in the war of conquest. In exchange, they were spared total annihilation. The war between the civilized galaxy and the Horde drew on for decades. Our combined fleets were a match for those of the Horde, but the Horde did not follow galactic convention on the ground. We could bombard them, ruin their fortresses, decimate their cities, even glass their continents, but nothing beyond cracking the very planet would rid them of it. As long as the hostile planet or station was present, no ground could truly be gained with an adversary gathering strength from behind. And so, the war settled into a stalemate, with the Horde being defeated in space and us being unable to beat them on the ground. That was until the humans came to help. They had lost one of their core worlds, an industrial world known as Harmony, to a surprise Horde attack. The population had been massacred and the resources pillaged for war effort, and the humanity had been left with a bloody, barren world that billions had once called home. Humans were a species that, while inherently combative with one another, displayed a high level of camaraderie as a whole. The loss of one of their worlds had enraged the humans and sent them from being a previously neutral power to a fervent ally of the now coalition of civilized worlds. It was them who broke the stalemate, who took back the ground, bound by stifling traditions and inflexible doctrine. We had been unable to fight on the ground. The humans, however, were never more adept at it. We watched with awe as the legions of stalwart soldiers and tanks were deployed on Horde-controlled worlds and fought with the fervor of 1,000 orbital strikes. They did not merely damage enemy fortifications, they utterly obliterated them. They followed no rules, no codes, no conventions. Every human soldier fought as if they were fighting for their own lives, and with that game of ferocity and viciousness needed to win a war. On the final world of the Horde, the former Humanity fortress known as Camaret, the humans proved their valor one last time. Against the combined Horde, the humans fought the single bloodiest battle in galactic history. Nearly 2 billion humans were left broken and mangled on that bloody world when the year of fighting had ceased with the raising of the flag. In a controversial but well-earned move, they raised the flag of humanity first, the symbol of their system against the blue backdrop, before raising that of the coalition. And so the civilized galaxy had won the war, and humanity had won their reputation. They had changed the face of warfare across the galaxy forever, their legacy ingrained onto the monuments and in the blood-soaked dirt of 1,000 worlds, for all of history, for all of time. Humanity will be known as the ones who got it done. End of story. I would just quickly like to thank the T5 channel members and patrons: Caspar Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Barkey, It's Difficult to Pronounce, Lord Azrakul, and Arcadian.